Dale Earnhardt died right in front of millions of viewers, but the shock didn't stop at the track. More than 2 decades later, his children, who live in the shadow of a legend, are finally speaking out. They confirmed what many had suspected, but never heard from insiders. The truth behind the Earnhardt family curtain was anything but smooth. When the Earnhardts themselves speak out, things change, and a part of the truth that has never been made public is finally made clear. A few years after Dale Earnhardt's death, NASCAR was rocked by a lawsuit filed by his own family. The plaintiff was Teresa Earnhardt, Dale's third wife, who had accompanied him through his prime years. The defendant was none other than Kelley Earnhardt, Dale's eldest son from his first marriage. The issue was the name, more specifically, the phrase Earnhardt Collection, a brand that Kelley wanted to use for his home and interior design products. Teresa objected vehemently. She argued that the Earnhardt name was a legally protected trademark owned by Dale Earnhardt Inc. or DEI, the company Dale founded and Teresa took control of after his death. The move caused a public outcry. Kelley could have simply used his own legal name, his father's, but Teresa argued that would have caused confusion and diminished the brand she had protected for so many years. The legal battle dragged on. The result: Kelley was allowed to use the phrase Earnhardt Collection, but with conditions and restrictions on media coverage and presentation. But it was not just the verdict that drew attention, but the message behind it. The confrontation between stepmother and stepson turned a family issue into a public one. The public began to ask a question that had been simmering for a long time: who really owns the Earnhardt legacy? At the same time, 2 other children, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Kelley Earnhardt Miller, also began to show signs of conflict with Teresa. As Dale's biological children, both were trying to continue their racing careers and preserve their father's legacy. But when they failed to reach an agreement with Teresa about sharing control of DEI, the last option was to leave. In 2007, Dale Jr. and Kelley withdrew from DEI entirely, announcing the formation of JR Motorsports, a separate, independently operating racing team. This was not only a career turning point but also a definitive statement. They would not let anyone control their father's legacy if it wasn't based on his true values. The tension between the 2 sides was obvious without words. Teresa continued to control DEI, though the company eventually declined, eventually merging with another team to survive. Meanwhile, JR Motorsports under Dale Jr. and Kelley gradually became one of the most stable names in the NASCAR Xfinity series. In the middle is Taylor Nicole Earnhardt, Dale and Teresa's youngest daughter. The only one of 4 children to live under the same roof as Dale and Teresa, Taylor has remained silent in the face of public conflict. She has not participated in the dispute, has not commented publicly, and has not taken sides. But because of that, it is difficult for NASCAR fans to understand where Taylor stands in the family war. One thing is clear: Teresa and Taylor remain close. Meanwhile, the rift between Teresa and her 3 remaining children has been years in the making. The lawsuit with Kelley is more than just a trademark dispute. It's the public expression of a series of conflicts that have been brewing behind the scenes since Dale Earnhardt's death. Public opinion is divided. One side believes that Teresa is just doing her job of protecting the brand and preserving the business value. The other side sees her as a controlling woman who wants to own the legacy exclusively, even if that means fighting against her husband's stepchildren. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is more than just the son of a NASCAR legend. He carries the expectations of millions of fans, the symbol of the greatest legacy in the history of the sport. But that pressure once broke him from the inside. After Dale Earnhardt Sr. died at Daytona in 2001, Dale Jr. was thrust into the spotlight by the media. The comparisons, the demands for success, all while he was still grappling with his own loss. In his autobiography, Racing to the Finish, Dale Jr. doesn't shy away. He writes openly about the years he spent as a shadow. He tells of his father's strictness, how Dale Sr. never gave him an easy time, on the track or off. To outsiders, Dale Sr. was the epitome of winning. To Dale Jr., it was a harsh standard he could never reach. After the accident, Dale Jr. sank into depression. No one realized it at the peak of his career. He still won, still appeared on the podium. But inside was confusion, a sense of disorientation because he no longer had the father who had guided him even in the harshest way. The first years after the accident were a series of days when Dale Jr. lived in a state of tension, trying to prove something that he himself did not know what. Kelley Earnhardt Miller, Dale Jr.'s sister and closest companion, once admitted that the death of her father forced Dale Jr. to mature faster than he was prepared for. Kelley herself was under no small amount of pressure. As the woman associated with the image of JR Motorsports, she had to support her brother in his career and be a fulcrum in negotiations, disputes, and even mental crises. Kelley describes her father as a man of few words, but who exerted great pressure with his gaze. Dale Sr. taught her endurance and perseverance, but he also left her with an emotional void that has never truly been filled. After his death, Kelley became the manager not only of the team but also of Dale Sr.'s memory, a memory she has often struggled to see objectively. For Kelley Earnhardt, the pressure of carrying the Earnhardt name was even more complicated. He didn't grow up with a father. Dale divorced Kerry's mother when he was very young, and Dale Sr. was barely a presence in his life during his childhood. It wasn't until he was an adult that Kerry began to build a relationship with his father, but not long enough to bridge the two-decade gap. When Dale Sr. died, Kerry was just beginning to feel like he had a real father. In an episode of the Dale Jr. Download, Kerry said that the few times he got to hunt or go to the races with his father were precious but short-lived memories. For Kerry, Dale Sr. was not a close biological father. He was more like a monument that he did not dare to get too close to for too long. What he left behind was regret, because he did not have more time to understand each other. Taylor Nicole Earnhardt, the only child who lived in the Dale and Teresa household, had a different experience. Taylor grew up when Dale Sr. was already a star. She remembers her father as a busy man, but she always portrayed him as a loving father during the rare times they were together. Taylor did not race. She chose a path that involved farming, volunteering, and keeping a low profile. In a rare interview, Taylor described her father as unpredictable but never forgetting that he was a father. She has not shared much about her relationship with her siblings but has said that her father taught her independence, something she carries with her to this day. Behind the image of the Intimidator is a father who is not good at expressing his feelings, but leaves an indelible mark on the psychology of his children. When they speak out, it is not to praise or criticize, but to face a truth. Dale Earnhardt is great on the track and complicated in the role of a father. The legacy is divided into 5 parts. When Dale Earnhardt died, he left behind not only his name but also a business that was at its peak, Dale Earnhardt Inc. This was the company he founded, which integrated the race team, the brand, and Earnhardt's image as a dominant icon. But over the next few years, DEI began to decline, and the reasons for this were not outside of NASCAR. For Dale Jr. and Kelley Earnhardt Miller, it was a matter of control. After her father died, Teresa Earnhardt took sole control of DEI. Although she had played a prominent role in the company, tensions escalated when she refused to share decision-making power with her husband's stepchildren. Dale Jr., as the team's main driver and Dale Sr.'s most famous son, felt he was being pushed out of what was rightfully his. In 2007, when internal negotiations between him and Teresa reached a dead end, Dale Jr. made the tough decision to leave DEI. It was not only a shock to NASCAR fans but also a public signal that the family rift had reached a point where it could no longer be reconciled within the corporate framework. He didn't leave alone. Kelley, who had always been by his side in major decisions, left with him and began building JR Motorsports. The birth of JR Motorsports was more than just a spin-off of a new racing team. It was the beginning of the division of the Earnhardt legacy in ways no one had ever imagined. A unified empire now fragmented. Dale Jr. and Kelley decided to ignore their inheritance and build their own racing team from scratch. They rebuilt the Earnhardt brand on their own terms, without Teresa's, or any of the old DEI structures. JR Motorsports grew. Meanwhile, DEI, without a key driver and a new lease of life, fell into crisis. A few years later, the company was forced to merge with Chip Ganassi Racing to stay afloat. For many, it was a clear end to DEI's reign of power and proof that the Earnhardt legacy could not be sustained by legal control alone. On the other side of the coin, Kelley Earnhardt is also trying to find his own place. He hasn't raced professionally for as long as Dale Jr., but he still wants to build a career based on the value of the Earnhardt name. The Earnhardt Collection Project is the most obvious example, but instead of being supported, he was hit with a lawsuit from Teresa. As mentioned earlier, although the lawsuit ended in Kelley's favor, the incident left the impression that the Earnhardt name was no longer a bond, but a divided and contested territory. While her siblings have built or restored their legacies in their own ways, Taylor Nicole Earnhardt has taken a completely different path. She hasn't raced. She hasn't run for the top job. Instead, she's focused on her family's farm and the Dale Earnhardt Foundation, a community-focused charity named after her father. Taylor has not used the Earnhardt name to start a business or gain fame. She has kept a low profile but has maintained a quiet commitment to the humanitarian values that Dale Sr. once represented off the track. In the public eye, she is the most traditional custodian of the legacy, but she has stayed out of any conflicts involving money and power. Each person holds on to a piece of the memory. Each person redefines Earnhardt's worth in a different way. But in the end, the legacy is no longer a unified whole. It is fragmented by the very people who loved Dale Earnhardt the most. Strangers then close, Dale Earnhardt had 4 children. But over the years, they didn't all see each other as family. Not growing up under the same roof, not sharing a mother, not sharing a childhood. The distance between the Earnhardt siblings was once palpable, even cold. But time, loss, and a deliberate effort to heal have slowly brought them back. Together, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Kelley Earnhardt are a prime example. Both sons of Dale Sr., they had completely different childhoods. Kelley was the son of his first marriage and grew up with little to no father. Dale Jr. was the son of his second marriage and lived with his father while he was making his name. Kelley was already a teenager when he learned that Dale was his biological father. The brothers didn't really spend much time together until they were adults. In a remarkable episode of the Dale Jr. Download podcast, Kelley recounts the first time he saw his brother again when they were both in their 30s. It was awkward, even reserved at first. They grew up with different memories, different stories about the same father. Kelley felt like an outsider, and Dale Jr. admitted that he didn't understand his brother's situation and feelings. Kelley Earnhardt Miller has always been the glue that holds the family together. She is the one who stands between her siblings, both in the industry and emotionally, with Dale Jr. She is the one who guides his career and keeps him grounded during the most turbulent times. With Kelley, she is not distant. Although not a biological sister, Kelley has always tried to keep the connection to a minimum necessary to avoid a complete family breakdown. Nevertheless, closeness does not mean no conflict. Kelley and Dale Jr. had conflicts over the development direction of JR Motorsports. Kelley is a fierce, strict manager who does not easily compromise. Dale Jr. is emotional and idealistic. They disagreed on personnel strategy, investment, and how to preserve the Earnhardt name in the new model. But they did not let these differences destroy their trust. Both understood that if they lost the only unity they had left, all the effort since leaving DEI would collapse. Taylor Nicole Earnhardt is the unknown quantity in the sibling relationship, not often photographed, spoken out, or publicly seen. With the other 3, Taylor is seen as the one who stays out of the debate about assets, brands, or careers. She lives with her mother, Teresa Earnhardt, and is not closely involved with JR Motorsports or Kelley's activities. There have been small signs, nonetheless, that Taylor hasn't completely distanced herself. She appeared at a NASCAR event honoring Dale Sr. along with Dale Jr. and Kelley. She didn't speak or pose for a photo, but her presence was seen by the media as a sign of reconciliation. Sources close to her have suggested that Kelley invited Taylor to participate in a community project for the Dale Earnhardt Foundation, but neither has confirmed it. Taylor's interactions with her siblings are not as dramatic. But one thing is clear. Even though they've each chosen different paths, the distance they once had is no longer an absolute barrier. When all the noise dies down, you're left with a few people who really understand you, Dale Jr. once said in an interview. And they're often family, even if you don't think of them that way. At this point, the question is not who is right or wrong. It is whether Dale Earnhardt's children can truly escape the shadow of their greatness and live their own lives. Something they are only now finding the courage to face. Dale is no longer immortal. For years, the name Dale Earnhardt has been synonymous with power, speed, and invulnerability. But when those closest to him began speaking out, the image was brought back to human proportions. They didn't demean him, they didn't deify him. They told the story as it was, and that made the truth more powerful than any myth. Dale Earnhardt Jr., who was the center of all expectations after his father's death, finally said what many had thought. He raced not to win, but to find his father. In an interview with the Washington Post, Dale Jr. shared that the loneliness that surrounded him after the accident came not from the media, but from the unanswered question, would his father be proud of him? Kelley Earnhardt Miller isn't holding back anymore. In a recent podcast, she candidly said that her father wasn't perfect. He wasn't good at showing affection. He wasn't always there. But he created a pressure that built up so much that it made them into people who couldn't be broken easily. Kelley didn't sugarcoat the memory. She confirmed what viewers had already guessed. Her father was tough, and that sometimes hurt his family before inspiring millions of fans. Kelley Earnhardt may have had the saddest voice of the four. He didn't live with his father. He didn't get to see Dale Sr. every day. As they began to rebuild their relationship, time was running out. Kelley says he learned to forgive, not Dale, but himself. Forgive him for being angry, for feeling abandoned, or feeling like he was an extra in the Earnhardt legacy. For Kelley now, his father wasn't a monument, just someone he tried to understand and now tried to hold on to in a way that wouldn't hurt him anymore. If this story resonates with you, leave a comment. What do you think of Earnhardt's legacy? After all, like, share, or subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the real, deep, and untold stories behind legendary names. Thank you for watching until the end.